like $60 for $3.99 a month. In Cleveland, we had a tragedy where Tamir Rice was shot, 12-year-old, with a toy gun, shot in 2 seconds flat. That's among the many tragedies that's happened in Ohio, including John Crawford, also shot with a toy gun at a Walmart. Also, the shooting began within 1 second, and he was killed within 6 seconds. They were both African American. Now, the most famous person in Cleveland by an order of magnitude is LeBron James. So people are now wondering, hey, LeBron, are you going to say anything about it? First, it's not like LeBron James hasn't made statements in the past about police brutality. In the case of Eric Garner, he wore the I Can't Breathe t-shirt, as a lot of players did back then. And that was pretty... Look, it was a good cause. It was also cool. And I'm glad they did it. I'm super, super, super glad they did it. And now people on Twitter are wondering, hey, are you going to say anything about Tamir Rice? Earlier this week, Tim McGindy, the prosecutor in Cleveland, pretty much bragged about how he threw the case. He said, I went to a grand jury and told them not to indict. Never. That's unheard of. Prosecutors are supposed to go to grand juries to get indicted. They are the prosecutors. They're not the defense attorneys. In this case, he doesn't want to prosecute the cops. He called their actions reasonable to drive up to a 12-year-old. Don't ask him if he's got a toy gun. Don't ask him anything. Just get out of the car and shoot him dead. They found those actions to be reasonable, and he brought on defense witnesses, the prosecution, in a grand jury where he doesn't have to present anything from the defense. Brought on defense witnesses and no prosecution witnesses. He let the cops testify and didn't cross-examine them. I mean, I've never seen a prosecutor throw a case this bad in my life. And so if you're in Cleveland and you're worried about your safety, you should be. The cops are above the law. They can shoot you dead in 2 seconds flat, and they'll get away with it, and their actions will be called reasonable. They can shoot your kids dead. He's 12 years old. They said, well, he looked older, you know. African Americans look so much older. According to studies, they literally do to white people. They look older than they are, the African American kids, by about 4.5 years. So it's so scary, had to shoot him before we asked any questions at all. So now on Twitter, people are asking, can we collectively flood King James mansions to remind him not to play? Hashtag no justice, no LeBron. Now, not playing, yeah, that's definitely bold, and it would be an action that would be, significant. I don't know that I'm asking LeBron James to do that. I mean, it sounds like, wow, not playing basketball game. That would be crazy. That's radical, right? But can you at least say something about it? You know, they love you in Cleveland. You took your talents back to Cleveland, to this city that has this grotesque injustice system. Not a justice system. Their cops brag about how they're going to intimidate athletes. When they were doing the earlier protests, whether it was the basketball players or the football players in Cleveland, some cops went on TV and said, maybe we won't protect them then, okay? So this is their attitude. So you've got a voice. It's the largest voice in Cleveland. So people are legitimately asking, can you use it, please? Here's another tweet. Hashtag no justice for Tamir Rice means we got to fight back. King James, when are you going to use your platform? Obviously, LeBron James, if you're not familiar, his nickname is King James. We'll get to that in a second. Jason Chestnut then writes that the powers that be in Cleveland would cower before their star athlete, King James, if he refused to play. No justice, no LeBron. Well, I'll tell you this much. When athletes take a stand and they start not playing, it definitely captures people's attention. Then all of a sudden, people focus. It happened at the University of Missouri when the football team decided they were going to join a strike. All of a sudden, administrators took the concerns of African American students a little bit more seriously. Turns out that they were being called the N-word throughout campus. Before, no action. Athletes do something, a lot of action. In fact, a couple of administrators stepped down there. So could LeBron have an effect? You know he could. Whether you think he has the obligation to do that, that's a different question, and a question we're going to ask you in a second. City Block writes in, no justice, no LeBron. King James, your son could have been Tamir Rice. That's powerful. And then another tweet here, can't be king if you can't represent the people. Well, that is a very good point. If you're not going to do any of that, I don't know if at a minimum, whether we should continue to call you King James. Maybe something else. So LeBron James did put out a very mild statement afterwards, which didn't really appease anyone. He said, "I understand that any lives that are lost, what we want more than anything is prayer. I don't know about that. And the best for the family, for anyone. But for me to comment on the situation, I don't have enough knowledge about it." Now, the reason I say I don't know about that when it comes to prayer is, here's what I would prefer over prayer: action. So if we retool the Cleveland Police Department to actually care about the citizens, to not shoot them in 2 seconds flat, to say, hey, maybe I should pause for a second before I take out my gun, before I point it at somebody, before I shoot it at a 12-year-old. Maybe I should pause. Maybe we should fix their training so they're not trained. Hey, you could die at any second. Everybody's a danger. You're an occupying force. They're the enemy. Make sure you get them before they get you. Maybe if we stop that training, that would be more powerful than talk about prayers, which leads to no action at all. And that's the point. Now, look, I know people are being tough on LeBron James, and I actually said this earlier in the week. As soon as the news came out, there was going to be no indictment in the Tamir Rice story and case. And I did it based off, honestly, a tweet we got during the live show. One of our viewers said, hey, why doesn't LeBron James do something about this? And I spoke out and they said, yeah, I mean, what do you do? Like, this is your hometown. You said you're not going to go play anywhere else, and you came back to Cleveland to try to bring a championship. If you care that much about your hometown, maybe you should say something. Look, I get the other side of the equation. People saying, hey, man, that's not his job. That's not his role. I agree with him that I know it's not easy, and if you get any part of it wrong, people are going to be all over you. So you got to do your research. You got to check with people. You got to make sure you got your facts right before you speak out. I understand all that, and I understand that it's a world of pressure. I get all that. But you're in a unique role here. It's not any athlete in any city. Yeah, there are giant athletes in New York and Kobe in LA, but this is a small city relatively in America with perhaps the biggest athlete in the country. He has disproportionate power in a city where African Americans sorely need power. So I would, in this case, not in all cases involving all athletes or celebrities, but in this case, I would urge LeBron James to speak out. Because if you don't speak out, who is? Who's got enough power to be able to speak out to try to get some change? Does it require courage? Yes. Will there be downsides? Yes. Will you maybe have some sponsors get a little skittish? Yes. You've got enough money. I'm not saying that's his sole motivation. And if he wants to take more time, figure out exactly all the facts of the case, I get it. But at some point, I vote that he does have some sort of obligation. We're curious how you vote on this. We don't do the polls unless we genuinely want to know what you think. This is on the TYT app, and I'm curious to see how this is going to come out. Is LeBron James obligated, we ask, to speak out about Tamir Rice's killing? And about the Cleveland Police Department, and is this ever going to be fixed? So I'm curious what you guys think. It's not an easy case, but in this situation, given that he's certainly the most famous, and maybe the most powerful person in Cleveland, somebody's got to do it, and he's a pretty damn good candidate to speak out forcefully and say this has got to be fixed. There is something wrong. Don't close your eyes to it. Don't be blind to it. It could be anybody's son. You got